Every morning in Japan's mountain villages, while most of the world is still waking up, men and women in their 80s and 90s are already moving through sequences that researchers have linked to something extraordinary. Their joints stay supple decades longer than ours. Their balance remains steady on mountain paths where younger tourists stumble. And here's what catches attention. These aren't the stretches or exercises you see promoted everywhere. These are 3 specific movements, rooted in centuries of daily practice, that almost never make it into Western longevity advice. Yet, when you look at the data on mobility and independence among Japanese elders compared to Americans over 60, the gap is staggering. We're talking about differences of 10 to 15 years in functional age. Now, before we go further, drop a comment right now and tell me your age and where you're watching from. I'm curious how many of you are already noticing changes in how your body moves compared to 5 or 10 years ago. Here's what most people miss. When we talk about aging and movement in the West, the conversation always lands on cardio, weights, maybe some yoga. All valuable. But the Japanese approach targets something different entirely. They focus on what they call the body's hinges and springs, the small stabilizing muscles and fascia that determine whether you can get off the floor easily at 75 or whether you need help, whether you can carry groceries without your lower back seizing up, whether you wake up stiff or fluid. And the science is finally catching up to what these mountain communities have known for generations. The first movement is going to surprise you because it looks almost too simple to matter. The second one challenges something doctors in America have been telling us to avoid for decades. And the third, the one that barely takes 90 seconds but that Japanese physical therapists call the master key, that's the one that might reshape how you think about what your body can still do. Let's start with number 3 and work our way to the most powerful. Movement number 3 is called knee circling, or in Japanese, Hiza Mawashi. You're probably thinking, circling your knees, how is that going to change anything? Here's why it matters. Most of us over 60 have knees that move in only 2 directions anymore, forward and back, the hinge motion of walking and sitting. But your knee joint is designed for subtle rotation too, a small but critical range that keeps the cartilage nourished and the tendons elastic. When you lose that rotational capacity, and most of us do without realizing it, the joint starts to dry out. You get that grinding sensation, that stiffness after sitting for an hour. And here's the kicker. Once the cartilage starts thinning because it's not getting full range movement, it doesn't regenerate. You're managing damage from that point on. Research from Japanese orthopedic clinics that work with aging populations shows that people who maintain rotational knee mobility well into their 70s have significantly lower rates of osteoarthritis progression. We're not talking about stopping arthritis if you already have it, but slowing the timeline, keeping more function for more years. The mechanism is straightforward. Your knee cartilage has no blood supply. It gets nutrients from synovial fluid, and that fluid only circulates when you move the joint through its full range. Circling the knee creates gentle pressure and release that pumps that fluid. Think of it like wringing out a sponge and letting it soak up water again. Let me tell you about Robert, 71, a retired electrician from Pennsylvania. He came to me last year because his knees hurt every time he went upstairs, and his doctor had told him it was just arthritis, manage it with ibuprofen. Robert's problem wasn't advanced arthritis yet, though he was heading there. His problem was that his knees had forgotten how to rotate. We started with knee circles every morning, just 2 minutes, and within 3 weeks he told me the grinding sound was gone. 6 weeks in, he was taking stairs without holding the railing. Now, 8 months later, he hikes with his grandkids. The cartilage didn't grow back, but it stopped degenerating so fast, and the muscles around the knee got strong enough to stabilize the joint properly. Here's exactly how you do Hiza Mawashi. Stand next to a wall or counter for light balance support. Lift 1 foot slightly off the ground, just an inch or 2, knee bent. Now, using your thigh muscles, draw slow circles with your knee. Not your foot, your knee. Imagine your kneecap is a pencil and you're drawing a circle in the air in front of you. Go clockwise for 10 circles, then counterclockwise for 10. Keep the circles small at first, maybe the size of a dinner plate. Your foot will naturally move as your knee circles, that's fine, but the motion is initiated from the knee joint itself. Do both legs. The whole thing takes 90 seconds. Start with small circles and only go as far as feels stable. If you have a replaced knee, you can still do tiny circles, but keep them very gentle and check with your surgeon first. If you feel sharp pain, stop. You're looking for gentle stretch and a sense of the joint moving through ranges it hasn't visited in a while. Do this every morning before you have coffee. That's your habit stack. Put on the coffee, circle your knees while it brews. The consistency matters more than the intensity. Now here's what nobody tells you. If you're over 60 and you've been inactive, your knee joint has likely settled into a limited range. The first week of doing this, you might feel awkward or even a little sore. That's not damage, that's reawakening. Stick with it. By week 2, the circles will feel smoother. By week 4, you'll notice that getting out of a chair feels different, lighter somehow. That's your knees starting to remember what they were built to do. One more thing about this movement. It works best when combined with calm breathing. In through your nose for 4 counts while you circle, out through your mouth for 4 counts. This isn't just relaxation. Controlled breathing lowers cortisol, and cortisol directly impacts inflammation in your joints. You're working on 2 systems at once, the mechanical joint and the inflammatory environment. That's how the Japanese think about it. Everything connects, but knee circling is just the foundation. It wakes up your lower body. Movement number 2 goes deeper, and it's one that Western medicine has spent decades warning us against. Let's talk about what they call the deep squat hold, or in Japanese, Shojin no Kamae, a term borrowed from monks who held this position during meditation. Now, if you've been to a doctor in America and mentioned knee pain, you've probably been told to avoid deep squats. Too much pressure, too risky. And for some people, especially those with advanced arthritis or acute injury, that advice makes sense. But here's the truth that's starting to emerge from research in Asia, and now some forward-thinking clinics in the West. The deep squat, when done correctly and progressively, is one of the single most effective movements for maintaining hip and pelvic floor health as you age. Why does this matter so much after 60? Because your hip flexors, the muscles at the front of your hips, spend most of modern life in a shortened position. Sitting in cars, sitting at meals, sitting watching television. Over years, those flexors tighten and pull your pelvis forward, which compresses your lower back and weakens your glutes. At the same time, your pelvic floor, the hammock of muscles that supports your bladder and bowel, loses tone. This is why so many people over 60 deal with incontinence, with lower back pain that won't quit, with hips that feel locked. The deep squat reverses all of that in one movement. It opens the hip flexors, activates the glutes, and gently strengthens the pelvic floor under load. Studies from Japanese universities that tracked rural populations found that elders who maintained the ability to squat deeply, even just holding the position for 30 seconds, had markedly better scores on independence and mobility assessments compared to those who couldn't. We're talking about the ability to garden, to get down on the floor with grandchildren, to use a toilet without assistance. The squat is a predictor of autonomy. Let me tell you about Helen, 68, a former teacher from Ohio. Helen had lower back pain for 15 years. She'd tried physical therapy, injections, even considered surgery. Her hip flexors were so tight she couldn't stand up straight without pain. She couldn't sit on the floor, period. We started her on a modified squat progression, and I'll explain this in a second. But the key was going slow. After 2 months of daily practice, her back pain dropped by about 70%, her estimate. After 4 months, she got down on the floor to play with her grandson, something she hadn't done in a decade. She cried when she told me. It wasn't a miracle. It was her body remembering a range of motion it was designed to have. Here's the protocol, and this is critical. You do not jump into a full deep squat if you haven't done one in 20 years. You build. Start with a half squat, holding onto a sturdy counter or table edge. Feet shoulder-width apart, toes slightly out. Lower yourself until your thighs are roughly parallel to the ground, like you're sitting into a chair. Hold for 10 seconds. Breathe. Stand back up using your legs, not your arms. Do that 3 times. That's day 1 through maybe day 30, depending on how you feel. When the half squat feels easy, lower a bit further, maybe another 3 or 4 inches. Hold that for 10 seconds. You're aiming, over weeks or months, to eventually lower until your hips drop just below your knees, a full deep squat. But here's the thing, some of you may never get there, and that's okay. The benefit comes from the progressive deepening, from asking your hips and knees to access more range over time. Even a 3/4 squat, held for 20 seconds daily, will transform your hip and pelvic floor function. Use a yoga block or a low stool under your heels if your ankles are tight. Many people over 60 have lost ankle flexibility, and that limits squat depth. Elevating your heels slightly lets you squat deeper without falling backward. Hold on to something for balance at first. There is zero shame in support. The goal is not to prove anything. The goal is to restore function. Do this every evening before dinner. That's your stack. Walk into the kitchen, squat, hold, breathe, stand, then cook. 1 minute of your day. If you have acute knee pain, a recent injury, or severe arthritis, talk to a physical therapist before you try this. But for most people over 60, the squat, built progressively, is safer and more effective than avoiding it. Your hips will thank you. Your back will thank you. And your independence a decade from now will thank you. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Those 2 movements, the knee circles and the squat, they're preparing your body for the 3rd movement, the one Japanese therapists call the master key. This is the movement that ties everything together, and it's the one you've probably never heard of. But before we get there, take a second and comment below, do you currently have any hip or knee pain that limits your daily activity? Just a quick yes or no. I want to understand who's watching and what you're dealing with. Movement number 1, the most powerful and the least known, is called ankle pumping with resistance, or in Japanese, ashikubi undo. And here's why this matters more than almost anything else. Your ankles are the foundation of your entire kinetic chain. Every movement you make, walking, standing, balancing, starts with how well your ankles can flex and stabilize. When your ankles lose range of motion and strength, which happens slowly and silently after 60, everything above them compensates. Your knees twist inward to stabilize. Your hips hike up. Your lower back arches to keep you upright. You start shuffling instead of striding. And here's the dangerous part. Poor ankle mobility is one of the strongest predictors of falls in older adults. A fall at 65 is an inconvenience. A fall at 75 can be life-altering. We're talking broken hips, loss of independence, a cascade that's hard to reverse. Japanese elders who practice ashikubi undo daily maintain ankle strength and flexibility that researchers have compared to people 15 to 20 years younger. The mechanism is simple but profound. Your calf muscles, specifically the soleus, act as a secondary heart for your lower legs. They pump blood back up against gravity. When you actively flex and point your feet under resistance, you're strengthening that pump, improving circulation, preventing the pooling and swelling that so many people over 60 experience in their ankles and feet. At the same time, you're maintaining the range of motion in the ankle joint itself, which keeps your gait smooth and your balance. Sharp.data from fall prevention. Programs in Japan shows that participants who added ankle resistance work to their routines reduced their fall risk by nearly 40% within 6 months. That's not a small number. That's the difference between staying in your home and needing assisted living. Let me tell you about George, 73, a retired postal worker from Michigan. George came to me after his 2nd fall in 6 months. Nothing broken, but he was shaken. His doctor wanted to talk about a walker. George's problem wasn't weakness in his legs overall. It was that his ankles had become stiff and weak. He couldn't flex his foot upward past 90 degrees, which meant every step was a shuffle, every uneven sidewalk a hazard. We started ashikubi undo, and within 2 weeks, George told me he felt more stable. 8 weeks in, his ankle range had improved by about 30%, his estimate from how it felt. He started taking walks again, confident. No more falls, now over a year later. His gait changed because his ankles started working the way they were supposed to. Here's the exact protocol. Sit in a sturdy chair, feet flat on the floor. Take a resistance band, the kind you can buy for a few dollars at any pharmacy, and loop it around the ball of one foot. Hold the ends of the band in your hands, creating tension. Now, flex your foot, pulling your toes toward your shin against the resistance of the band. Hold for 2 seconds. Then point your foot, pushing against the band. Hold for 2 seconds. That's 1 rep. Do 20 reps per foot. You want enough resistance that the movement feels challenging by rep 15, but not so much that you're straining. Start light. You can always add tension as you get stronger. Do this every morning, right after your knee circles. Same habit stack. Coffee brewing, knees circling, ankles pumping. 3 minutes total. That's all. If you don't have a resistance band, you can do a modified version by simply flexing and pointing your feet while sitting. No band, but add a pause and squeeze at each end of the range. It's less effective than using resistance, but it's still valuable. The key is the deliberate, controlled motion through the full range. Not fast pumps, slow, purposeful, feeling the muscles work. Now, here's what makes this the master key. When your ankles are strong and mobile, your knees don't have to overwork to stabilize you. When your knees are stable, your hips can move freely. When your hips move freely, your lower back isn't bracing all the time. Everything up the chain relaxes and functions better. That's why Japanese therapists teach this first when someone comes in with balance or gait issues. Fix the foundation, the ankles, and the rest starts to correct itself. One more thing. This movement also helps with something nobody talks about: restless legs and nighttime cramping. When you strengthen the soleus and improve circulation in your lower legs, you reduce the muscle fatigue and pooling that trigger those symptoms. Several people I've worked with reported that their nighttime leg cramps disappeared within a month of starting daily ankle pumping. That's a bonus, but it's rooted in the same mechanism: better blood flow, stronger muscles, healthier joints. So, let's bring this together. You have 3 movements. Knee circling, which restores rotational mobility and nourishes your cartilage. The deep squat hold, which opens your hips and strengthens your pelvic floor and lower back. And ankle pumping with resistance, which stabilizes your foundation and prevents falls. Each one takes 60 to 90 seconds. You can do all 3 in under 5 minutes every morning. No equipment except a resistance band that costs less than a cup of coffee. No gym, no commute. Just you and your body in your kitchen while the coffee brews. Here's the deeper principle that Japanese elders understand and that we often miss in the West. Aging is not about fighting your body or pushing it to perform like it did at 30. It's about maintaining the ranges and capacities that keep you autonomous. It's about small, consistent practices that compound over years. A 65-year-old who does these 3 movements daily will, at 80, have a body that functions more like 70. A 75-year-old who starts today will, at 90, still be walking without assistance, still be getting down on the floor, still be living in their own home. That's what the data suggests, and that's what the lived experience of these Japanese communities shows us. Now, you might be thinking, I've never heard of these movements from my doctor or my physical therapist. Why not? Part of it is cultural. Western medicine tends to react to problems rather than prevent them. We wait until the knee is bone on bone, then we replace it. We wait until someone falls, then we talk about walkers. The Japanese model, at least in these rural longevity communities, is different. They maintain function before it's lost. They practice movements daily that keep the body's full vocabulary available. It's a different philosophy, and the outcomes speak for themselves. Another part is that these movements don't fit neatly into our exercise culture. They're not intense. They don't burn calories. They don't build visible muscle. They're subtle, internal, foundational. They're not marketable, but they work. And the beauty is, you don't need anyone's permission to start. You don't need a prescription. You just need 5 minutes and the willingness to be consistent. Let's talk about what happens if you skip even one of these. Say you do the knee circles and the squat but ignore the ankles. You'll get some benefit, but your balance won't improve much and you'll still be at higher fall risk. Skip the squat, and your hips will stay tight, your lower back will keep hurting, and you'll lose the ability to get down and up from the floor. Skip the knee circles, and your cartilage will keep thinning, and you'll end up managing arthritis pain that could have been slowed. They work together. They're a system. The Japanese don't pick and choose. They do all three every day because each one addresses a different part of the aging puzzle. Here's a practical question people ask. What if I already have arthritis or replaced joint or chronic pain? Can I still do these? The answer is, it depends, and you need to talk to your doctor or physical therapist. But in many cases, yes, with modifications. Smaller ranges, lighter resistance, slower progressions. The principle still applies. You're trying to maintain or gently expand the function you have left. Even if you can't do a full squat, a supported half squat still helps. Now let's talk about timing and progression, because this is where people often get tripped up. You start these movements, you feel good for a week, then life happens and you skip a few days. Then a few days becomes a week, and you feel like you failed, so you stop altogether. Here's the truth. Consistency beats intensity every time. If you can only do these 3 times a week, that's infinitely better than 0. If you miss a week, you just start again the next day. No guilt, no drama. Your body doesn't care about your excuses or your perfect streak. It cares about the cumulative stimulus over months and years.